Welcome to the Out Agenda, coming to an archive.kpfk.org. I'm Rita Gonzalez. Well, we have another segment of Radio Q Glue. Our guest is Terry Garay, and we're going to be talking about Jewel Taze Williams. Welcome to Radio Q Glue podcast, the show that takes a deep dive in what the queer, gay, and lesbian Latin community is talking about. In today's episode, we are joined by Terry Garay as Radio Q Glue remembers the pioneering Black lesbian activist Jewel Taze Williams, owner of the Jewel's Catch One in Los Angeles. I'm Rita Gonzalez.
And I'm Eduardo Archuleta.
I'm Mario Jane Novoa.
And I'm Lydia Otero.
Jewel Taze Williams, the founder of the pioneering Black lesbian and queer nightclub Jewel's Catch One in Los Angeles, died on June 7th. She was 86 years old. Most of us here at Radio Q Glue got to know Jewel through her nightclub, the Catch One on Pico Boulevard. She was a Black woman who owned a club, and that in itself was a rarity. She always welcomed us with a smile when we arrived at her club, which survived for close to 3 decades. Jewel once said, "It's very important not to give up our institutions," and to us, the Catch One was an institution. Her AIDS activism was crucial during the bleakest era of the HIV/AIDS crisis, which ravaged queer communities of color in the 1980s and early 1990s. She co-founded the Minority AIDS Project and allowed groups like Gay and Lesbian Latinos Unidos to use the Catch One for fundraisers. Her community activism is what we are going to dive in today on Radio Q Glue with our guest, Terry Garay, who knew and worked with Jewel on HIV/AIDS causes.
Before talking with Terry, let me just say that she's a native of Los Angeles. She worked in television for many years as a producer, and it was while working in TV that Terry was drawn into activism. Her efforts helped put AIDS and HIV on television at a time when those subjects were taboo. She was particularly proud of her Emmy-winning special AIDS and You, which was directed to tween kids. Today, Terry manages a charitable trust that provides grants to nonprofits. She makes her home in Palm Springs. In 1986, Terry was active in the No on LaRouche campaign, which opposed Proposition 64, a measure related to mandatory AIDS testing and possible quarantine policies. She also served on several boards, including the Minority AIDS Project. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for joining us today.
This is Mario. I met Jewel a few times at Catch One and during the interview of our documentary film, LA: A Queer History. And I've heard about some of the ways queers organize around HIV/AIDS back then. Understanding the history a little bit more, I can see that it was a very difficult moment in time. Can you set the stage a bit for people of my generation? Why would a proposition threatening to quarantine those with HIV and AIDS even be seriously considered?
It was truly an amazing time, and you had issues that really had never been publicly addressed. And I worked in the media, and so I was familiar with, what people talked about and what people did not talk about. As a lesbian, I was very aware of the images that were projected about gay and lesbian people. So it was very, very, very different. And suddenly, and probably the most recent example is COVID. Suddenly you had people that were sick. They were sick in a way that was, absolutely extraordinary, AIDS and HIV. And the immediate response was, we want to get these people away from us because we don't know if we're going to get sick in the same way with, as with COVID. This is going to impact us in some way. And the idea that you had to engage in sexual relationships with individuals, and exchange bodily fluids in order to get AIDS or HIV was sort of lost. That wasn't part of our consciousness at that time. So the idea that somebody conservative could come into the landscape and suggest that we take all of these people who were in the beginning primarily gay men, so already it's like there's a little bit of prejudice there, and ship them off to an island or something, and that'll make us all safe. So very backward thinking, but at the time it seemed to make sense to people. And Lyndon LaRouche, in the same way as now we see with the MAGA movement, he had a base of supporters. And those people were frightened of these gay men with this disease that were going to infect us all. So they were able to bring about this initiative. And I always like to say, from ugliness, sometimes we get the most beautiful things. And in that way, it brought the LGBTQ community together in a way that was simply phenomenal.
This is Rita. That's when I met you, is during the LaRouche campaign. Now, you worked in the media, so you met a lot of people. Do you remember when you actually met Jewel?
I would have met Jewel, I'm guessing, in the late 80s. I first heard about AIDS, I'm guessing around 1985, just around the start. I was hanging in the West Hollywood area. My television station was on the Boundary. And at some point, somebody came to me and said that they were interested in putting public service announcements on TV that focused on what was still called the grid disease. And they were now starting to call it AIDS, but they were still referring to it as the grid disease. And on some level, I was quite young, but on some level, I recognized, I think this is important, and maybe I should escalate it at my TV station. And so my TV station ended up putting the first public service announcements regarding AIDS on television. And then I became very active with different organizations because no other TV station was supporting them, and organizations were cropping up to help people. And so I jumped in and became somebody that you could reach out to if you needed a video produced, a corporate video produced, if you needed a public service announcement produced. I mean, I must have produced for every single organization that focused on AIDS and HIV. And so then at some point, I also then joined boards of directors, and I ended up joining Minority AIDS Project. And that is where I met Jewel.
This is Eduardo. As you know, GLUE launched a Bienestar, a gay Latino AIDS project at the Catch One in 1989, and I was one of the first directors. We could always count on Jewel's support. Looking back, we chose to celebrate what was considered a monumental event, not at Circus or the other clubs typically associated with Latino clientele, but at the Catch. Tell us more about what the Catch symbolized back then.
The Catch was an amazing club. And here's where, you see leadership, right? Everyone went to the Catch. You could see celebrities like a Madonna at the Catch. And there were the doors weren't closed to anyone. So you could see all kinds of people of color. You could see straight people. You could see gay people. It was welcoming and inviting to everyone. And Jewel could have taken the easy route and just enjoyed being a club owner and hanging with the celebs and, being in the little private areas. But she didn't do that. She recognized that she had an opportunity to be a leader, to bring all of these different types of people together and start giving them important messages about that issue that was confronting and was soon to confront more of us. And so that was the difference about the Catch, that it was such an amazing, welcoming environment for all people. And she took that opportunity to then be able to focus people on that important issue of AIDS and HIV.
Hi, Terry. This is Lydia. And as you know, I was close to who was then Reverend Carl Bean back then when he first organized the Minority AIDS Project. And he was always a big supporter of GLUE. I mean, I don't know if people know, but GLUE paid his rent during the lean times, one lean month, when the Minority AIDS Project's offices were on Pico Boulevard. And my question has to do with his first fundraiser, Coming Home to Friends. Like he purposely tapped into certain segments of the Black community to raise funds for HIV AIDS. I know you were part of that effort, and can you share a little bit more about Coming Home to Friends? I know that Jewel was involved, and even I got to go backstage and meet Dionne Warwick. But tell us more because I think those events I don't see them recorded in histories of Los Angeles.
They were quite significant. And I think the big significance is that it was an event that was primarily targeted to the African American community. No one was excluded, but it was a gospel concert. And I think one of the issues that emerged is that there were some concerns in the African American community about accepting gay men. And suddenly, not only are you having to accept gay men, now you're having to accept gay men that potentially have this disease. And so they really wanted to make sure that they reached out to a large group of people and put on this gospel concert and used big names to attract others. So Carl Bean, when I first made the decision that I wanted to get involved with Minority AIDS Project, I didn't know him. I did not know Jewel personally. I just knew that the issue of AIDS and HIV was starting to go into the people of color communities at extraordinary levels. And I wanted to make sure that I was there to assist as a media person that could broaden the issue with media. And so I literally just showed up at the offices of Minority AIDS Project. And I said that I worked for a television station and that I was interested in helping. And they saw that that was an opportunity to bring awareness, greater awareness of the issue. And so they asked me if I would join the board of directors. I did not know Carl Bean. I did not know that Carl Bean had a history in the music industry and a huge hit. It's just like I just knew that this guy was making some inroads in an important issue and I wanted to help out. And he was incredibly welcoming. And Jewel was incredibly welcoming. And so I was simply embraced the idea that a Latina was coming in who represented television and was willing to help was, just something that they said, yeah, let's do it. And so when we started working on the Coming Home for Friends campaign, they used every opportunity to bring in more and more people. So so my television stations focused on the press event that would launch the event. So it started on a Monday, and we knew that we needed to bring in somebody that would bring attention, that would draw the press. And somebody said, "What about Natalie Cole?" And for people that are not aware, her brother had AIDS and died of AIDS. And so they reached out and they said, "Would you come and be one of the spokespersons for the Coming Home for Friends campaign?" And she said yes, and she came. And so we launched it that Monday and then had a series of different events all through the week. And then it culminated with this extraordinary gospel concert at the Shrine Auditorium. And different artists, name artists, came out and performed. And in the beautiful tradition of gospel, everybody was told you have one number or you have 3 minutes. And of course, they would go to 20 minutes. They do, more. But that was beautiful and it was wonderful. And everybody really got to see how important it was to be involved. And I will always give also extraordinary credit to Dionne Warwick, because Dionne Warwick had those direct contacts with the entertainment industry. And she could call somebody and they would pick up the phone and say, yes, we will be there on Saturday night and perform at no cost to the organization. So the organization was able to raise funds. It was able to bring awareness, and it was absolutely an effort where you had lots of different people involved. In my case, local television. In Dionne Warwick's case, the entertainment industry and the music industry. And then, Jewel with all of her contacts through the clubs, through the club. And so it was just truly a coming home for friends and a great event. And then it was done again for a few years after.
It was. And I just want to, I have a follow-up and just want to say that the song that Carl Bean made famous was Born That Way, which was later remade by Gaga. So it has a history, that song. As you're talking about coming home from friends, my follow-up question really has to do about the Latino community. Did they ever try to organize something similar by tapping into the Latino celebrity community?
When I was involved with one of the other nonprofit organizations that focused on AIDS, we did do a Latino focused event, and we did do outreach to the celebrity community. So we had some of the, how shall we say, the usual suspects that were there, that were willing to step up and be leaders. Edward James Olmos, Rita Moreno, and the La Opinión was very involved in making sure that messages went out to the Latino community. And so it was a gala event, and it was a high ticket event, and it did bring some awareness to people about the AIDS and HIV issue, but it was not grassroots Latino. So if there was a, how shall we say, a shortcoming, it is that there was no real effort to involve the Latino grassroots organizations.
This is Mario again. It's really great to learn more about the organizing that took place. There's a documentary about Catch One that I've watched, but I don't think it captures Jewel Tice Williams' organizational skills. How do you think she'll be remembered?
I think ultimately she will be remembered as an LGBTQ leader. She absolutely was. She took extraordinary steps to make sure that she embraced many different communities. Health and wellness were important issues to her. So after the world sort of caught up with the AIDS and HIV issue and the medical world had more involvement. She got an advanced degree, and she formed clinics and a wellness center. She was involved in also creating a shelter for battered women. So, I mean, her level of understanding and her sensitivity to issues was simply extraordinary. And she never backed away from the grassroots people. And I think that's what distinguishes her especially. Again, she was a club owner. She could have had just such an easy life, hanging in Malibu and then, in the private club room, when people came. She didn't do that. She was always out there making sure that she used her platform to make people aware of what was important as issues evolved and new issues arose.
This is Rita. Terry, you were involved in several other organizations that had HIV/AIDS causes. Have you ever thought about writing a memoir?
I have not considered a book because I think that, and this is no, this isn't throwing shade at Lydia, who has written books and authored books. I look at books as kind of the past. So, and then I come from TV. So I kind of look at, the internet and vlogging and blogging if I were to share memories with people. And so a book itself, while I consider myself a pardon my vanity, an extraordinary writer. I don't think I would do a book. Like I said, I would probably take advantage of the more modern mechanisms for getting information out.
This is Lita Terry, taking no shade, but I have gotten a lot of positive responses to my memoir about my time in Los Angeles. And I think so since you were on that media side, you experience things and you know things that I could never write about. And I hope you get around to writing a memoir so that young people can learn more. Because right now, what's so limited is where you know my story, right? So because I wrote it, but then you don't know what's happening outside of my story. So it just gives them a holistic understanding of that time. And that time was such a stands out. And I think young people are asking, like, what can you learn? What advice can you give us? And it's like, I go back to that time because, we were facing some of the similar dynamics of exclusion and discrimination that are coming up now. So researchers need to know about your activism and your involvement. So please reconsider and at least donate your documents to an archive.
I absolutely will. And the reality of me and my story is that I actually was also around when the Chicano activism was beginning in East Los Angeles. I was born and raised in Los Angeles and in in the Boyle Heights section of East Los Angeles. And so I was there when they had the very famous walkouts from the high school and around the time when they had the the marches. And so I remember that. And I think one of the things that always influenced me was in 1969, as I was walking to school, somebody had graffitied on a building a statement that has always stuck with me, and that was better one day a lion than 3,000 years a lamb. And so that has always stuck with me. And so it guided me in my media work where I illuminated issues of concern to the community. That was my main focus. And so, yes, I think that, the story of me, is something that might be of interest to future generations, and I have no problem sharing it. I'm just not as dedicated as you, Lydia, in getting down and writing a full book.
Well, I want to tag on to that because I've known you for a very long time. And some of your experiences, I think, are very valuable to today's generation and some of our generation to remember how we had to fight so hard, even to get Minority AIDS Project, why we had to do Minority AIDS Project. You were there. So I think, yeah, I'm with Lydia. I'm going to bug you to write a memoir.
Rita, this is Mario again. As a multimedia producer, I'm in agreement. I think the story that the the sliver of a story we captured today in sharing your history, I think is really, really important. And I wish that you do continue to share because as a media person who's gay, coming up at a time where we didn't have visibility, to know your history is really important. So I encourage you.
Thank you. I will take all of that into serious, serious consideration.
This is Eduardo, and I want to jump in too and say that whether it's writing or you do videoing and blogging or vlogging, I think it's important that you have important messages. You have a great deal of history to share. And recording that, again, whether that's in written form or in the form of video, I think is tremendous and can be of great benefit to future queer generations. I want to thank you for joining us, Terry. Do you have any parting words or advice for young queers listening right now who want to stand up and be active in their communities?
I think the statement that I mentioned about better one day a lion than 3,000 years a lamb is something that I want to leave with people. You cannot always step up and fight. So you want to choose your fights wisely. But I am definitely somebody that has stepped up when I needed to, and I've never been embarrassed to be Latina. I've never been embarrassed to, be a lesbian. And I think I've had a very privileged existence, and one of the perhaps interesting things about my upbringing is that frequently I pass. That's an interesting word, but I pass. I can look like many other things. And a Latina who is raised in a Spanish speaking home, not something that people would immediately think of when they look at me. And I've heard many statements that people have used, and I've had to correct them and say, no, I am one of them. And the same thing, perhaps I don't look like the stereotypical, and again, what is a stereotypical lesbian? But again, I've heard things and I've had to correct people and say, yes, I am one of them. I am a lesbian. And so I think, you want to choose your fights wisely, but when there's an opportunity to stand up, I think you should, because when you stifle yourself, I think that you are damaging yourself and you are not giving yourself a full opportunity to exist, and we should all exist.
Well, thank you so much, Terry, for joining us. And I have to say, when I worked with you on the Lures campaign, I thought you were an ally. I didn't know you were a lesbian for 2 years. So yeah, even our own community, sometimes we don't know. But thank you for joining us for Radio Q Glue. I'm Rita Gonzalez.
I'm Eduardo Archuleta.
I'm Lydia Otero.
I'm Mario J. Navoa.
Thank you for listening. And if you want to follow Radio Q Glue,
you can follow Radio Q Glue on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and our website on Buzzsprout. You can find Radio Q Glue by following us on any of those platforms, or even finding us through Google search.
This has been Eduardo Archuleta.
I'm Mario J. Navoa.
And I'm Rita Gonzalez. And Radio Q Glue is a part of the Out Agenda. And you can find more information or email us at theoutagenda@gmail.com or visit our Facebook. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful week. And remember that being out is the first step to being equal. Now here's This Way Out.